January 1974, Wichita, Kansas, a seemingly peaceful city in the heartland of America. But on a cold January morning in 1974, that tranquility was shattered. The Otero family, Joseph, Julie, and their two young children, were found brutally murdered in their home. Their deaths were as shocking as they were senseless. The crime scene was horrific. The killer had bound, tortured, and strangled his victims. He left no stone unturned, no detail overlooked. It was a crime that spoke of meticulous planning, of a chilling darkness lurking beneath the surface of a seemingly ordinary man. Little did Wichita know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare. The city held its breath. Fear gripped the community. Who could commit such a heinous act? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. The police launched a full-scale investigation, determined to bring the perpetrator to justice. But for now, the killer remained a phantom, a terrifying enigma. Dennis Rader, an ordinary name for an extraordinary monster, a man whose crimes would shock the world. Born in 1945 in Kansas, Rader grew up in a seemingly normal household, surrounded by the typical trappings of mid-century American life. But beneath the surface, darkness festered. A darkness that would eventually consume him. Rader harbored twisted fantasies, a fascination with death and control that grew with each passing year, feeding an insatiable hunger for power. He was a man of contradictions, living a life that was a carefully crafted lie. A Boy Scout leader, a church council president, a seemingly devoted husband and father, Rader wore many masks. But behind this carefully constructed facade, a sinister truth lay hidden, a truth that would eventually be revealed in the most horrifying way. Rader was leading a double life, his outward normalcy a stark contrast to the depravity that lurked within, a depravity that would eventually come to light.
From a young age, I displayed disturbing tendencies, behaviors that hinted at the darkness within me. I tortured animals, a chilling portent of the horrors I would later inflict upon my human victims, a sign of the monster I was becoming. My fantasies grew more vivid, my desires more perverse, each one feeding the next in a never-ending cycle of darkness. I craved control, power, and the thrill of domination, a need that would eventually drive me to commit unspeakable acts.
His fantasies soon morphed into a horrifying reality, a reality that would leave a trail of devastation in its wake. The Otero family murders were not a spur-of-the-moment act of violence, but a meticulously planned and executed crime. They were the culmination of years of twisted fantasies, a dark dream finally realized, the beginning of a reign of terror that would haunt Wichita for decades, a reign that would only end with his capture. Months turned into years, and the city of Wichita was left in a state of perpetual unease. The Otero family murders remained unsolved, a dark cloud hanging over the community. The killer seemingly vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. But the nightmare was far from over, and the city would soon be reminded of the lurking danger. In 1977, Wichita was once again gripped by terror, as another brutal crime shocked the residents. Shirley Vian, a young mother, was found murdered in her home, her life cut short in a senseless act of violence. Her children, though physically unharmed, were left forever scarred by the trauma of finding their mother's lifeless body. The method of killing, the meticulous staging of the crime scene, sent chills down the spines of even the most seasoned detectives. BTK was back, and his reign of terror was far from over.
The acronym, a chilling calling card left by the killer himself, stood for Bind, Torture, Kill. Bind, torture, kill. These three words encapsulated the horror that BTK inflicted on his victims. A chilling testament to his modus operandi, a macabre signature that sowed fear and uncertainty throughout Wichita. The city was on edge, living in the shadow of a predator they could not see, could not predict, and could not stop.
The city was on edge, living in the shadow of a predator they could not see, could not predict. Over the next few years, BTK would claim more victims, each crime more brutal than the last. Nancy Fox, Maureen Hedge, Vicki Wegerly, and Dolores Davis. Each name added to the growing list of lives destroyed by BTK. Each murder, a horrifying spectacle of violence, each life taken, a testament to Rader's escalating depravity. The people of Wichita were desperate for answers. Who was this monster? What drove him to commit such heinous acts? The people of Wichita were desperate for answers. Who was this monster? When would the nightmare end? The fear and uncertainty continued to grip the community as they waited for the day when BTK would finally be brought to justice. Dennis Rader, fueled by a perverse need for recognition, began a twisted game with the authorities. He craved notoriety, relished the fear he instilled. His weapon of choice? Words. He sent taunting letters to the police and media. In these chilling missives, he revealed details of his crimes, details that only the killer could know. He sent poems, puzzles, all designed to taunt, to prove his intellectual superiority over the very people tasked with catching him.
Each letter was a window into the mind of a madman, a mind consumed by darkness, by a perverse sense of accomplishment. With each communication, BTK tightened his grip on the city of Wichita, turning the investigation into a macabre game of cat and mouse.
The police were baffled. The letters provided clues, tantalizing glimpses into the killer's personality, but they also led to dead ends, frustrating the investigation at every turn. BTK was always one step ahead, seemingly toying with the authorities, reveling in the fear and uncertainty he created. The two faces of Dennis Rader, family man and serial killer. While terror gripped Wichita, Dennis Rader lived a seemingly normal life, a life that seemed almost too perfect to be true. He was a husband, a father, a respected member of his community, someone who was always there to lend a helping hand. He went to work, attended church, and blended seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life, never raising any suspicion. Nobody suspected the dark truth that lay hidden beneath the surface, a truth so horrifying it would shake the community to its core. He was a master of deception, a chameleon who could change his appearance and demeanor at will, adapting to any situation. His family, his friends, his neighbors, they all knew Dennis Rader, or at least they thought they did. But none of them truly knew the monster that lurked within, the darkness that he kept so well hidden. He lived a double life, compartmentalizing his dark desires, keeping his murderous urges tightly controlled, hidden from the world. He was a predator who walked among his prey, a wolf in sheep's clothing, always on the hunt. And for years he got away with it, leaving a trail of devastation and heartbreak in his wake. His ability to maintain this facade is a chilling reminder that monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they live among us. They can be our neighbors, our colleagues, even our friends, hiding in plain sight. BTK's double life is a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, and we may never know until it's too late. A digital misstep, the beginning of the end. Years turned into decades. The trail ran cold. BTK, silent since 1991, seemed to have vanished into thin air. The Wichita Police Department, though never giving up hope, had scaled back the investigation. But in 2004, on the 30th anniversary of the Otero family murders, BTK resurfaced. He sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle, reigniting the fear that had haunted the city for so long. But this time, he made a crucial mistake.
In his communication with the authorities, BTK inquired if it was safe to communicate via a floppy disk. The police, seeing an opportunity, assured him it was. This was a pivotal moment in the investigation.
Rader, blinded by his arrogance, by his need for control, took the bait. He sent a purple floppy disk to the police, believing his identity would remain hidden. He was wrong. Unmasking a monster, the capture of BTK. The floppy disk proved to be BTK's undoing. Investigators analyzing the deleted files discovered the name Dennis and a link to the Christ Lutheran Church. Further investigation revealed that Dennis Rader was the president of the church council. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place.
DNA evidence from Rader's daughter, obtained under the guise of a medical study, confirmed their suspicions. Dennis Rader was BTK.
On February 25, 2005, the authorities closed in. Rader, arrested during a routine traffic stop, could only stare in disbelief as the net finally closed around him. The man who had terrorized Wichita for over 3 decades, the master manipulator, the self-proclaimed mastermind, was finally caught.
The news of BTK's capture sent shockwaves through Wichita and beyond. The man who had haunted their nightmares, the boogeyman they thought they'd never see unmasked, was one of their own. The relief was palpable, but so was the disbelief. How could someone they knew, someone they trusted, be capable of such horrific acts?
Justice served. The trial and sentencing of Dennis Rader. The trial of Dennis Rader was a media spectacle. The world watched as the man who had once reveled in the spotlight was now forced to face the consequences of his actions. He was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Rader, in a chilling display of narcissism, seemed to relish the attention, often smirking and showing little remorse for his crimes. He gave a detailed confession, describing his murders in graphic detail, seemingly taking pride in his actions.
The jury, after deliberating for just over an hour, found Rader guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The judge, in handing down the sentence, called Rader evil and a monster.
With the trial over, Wichita could finally begin to heal. Justice had been served, but the scars of BTK's reign of terror would forever remain.